Welcome to The Art of Hunting, a podcast that explores the world of wildlife art through the eyes of one of the industry's most talented creators, Ryan Kirby. So whether you're a fellow artist, designer, hunter, or simply someone who appreciates the beauty of the natural world, join us on The Art of Hunting with Ryan Kirby and discover the passion and dedication that drives him.
He moved up to play coach's pitch from T-ball. He was really nervous. And Kim came home and said he wants to talk to you. And so I go in there and he's like teary-eyed. He's like, Dad, I don't want to do it because I'm going to be the new kid and they're going to make fun of me and I'm going to be the smallest and, you know, I might not be good enough. And I was like, well, Rhett, you're never going to be the smallest because he's a tall kid. But I told him, I made a deal. I was like, look, man, you don't have to play. You just show up and we'll play catch and warm up with the team. And then you decide if you want to play from there. And I knew as soon as he started playing with those boys, it'd be over with, it'd be game over. So that's what he did. But he was like legit in tears, nervous about going to play with the bigger kids. And he did great. So episode 9 of the Art of Hunting podcast. And today I have my girlfriend here on camera. No, this is my wife, Kim. And she's taking a break from ASU this morning from work to be here and do our Q&A.
Yep. Thanks for having me, babe.
Yep. This is your first time. She hasn't really been out here. we kind of do our own thing, and she hasn't been out here, so she's seen all the new cameras and mics and stuff we've got.
I do a lot of, I'm behind the scenes more with your business, which I'm okay with.
Yep. So, yeah. You're the host. You're in the host seat.
Okay. Well, we have quite a number of questions that were submitted from your followers. So we'll go ahead and get started. So, what other artists do you follow or recommend that your followers check out?
Well, there's a bunch of them. There are artists that like I admire for their business. There's artists that I admire for their art. I think that one of the crazy things, Mark Maggiore on Instagram, I've seen his art go for some crazy high stuff, and he's got some cool cowboy western art. I've never met Joel, but Joel Pilcher, he's got some cool stuff, some black and white. Chad Poppleton, I really like his stuff. I've met him at SEWE a couple times. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I don't follow a lot of other artists. I kind of learn and glean from them. Sam Larson is one. He's got some cool stuff. He does a lot of decal type stuff. I don't really follow a lot of other artists though, for the most part. I prefer to follow brands that I can learn other stuff from, I guess, for lack of a better term. But there's some great artists out there, and artists overall, I feel like they're really cool. And we go to trade shows and talk and hang out. And you get to talking to them, and we all kind of have the same stuff in common.
And I think with our time at SEWE, I mean, we've gotten to know a lot of the other artists, but my favorite's Thomas Brooks.
Thomas is got some good stuff.
He is solid when it comes to turkeys. Yeah. I mean, next to you, of course, but he's so talented with his turkeys.
And one of the reasons I'm having trouble coming up with those is you asked follow. So like Thomas, I'm not sure Thomas has Instagram.
Yeah.
But he's an older dude, kind of at the tail end of his career. So he's got some really cool works. I'm trying to think of people that they can go on Instagram and see. So, but yeah, Thomas has got some great stuff.
Yeah. And it's funny because before I met you, I really didn't know a ton about art. Didn't really have a interest in it. And I think since, with getting together with you, I've enjoyed now walking around the SEWE show and kind of seeing all the various different, some are abstract, some are wildlife, some are, just a variety of stuff. And everybody has their own talent, but of course you're my favorite to follow.
Oh, thank you. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
But a lot of, everybody kind of has their own thing. Like even though one artist might do the same sort of subject matter, the style is different. or they might
Yeah.
be a completely different subject matter, but the same realistic style. So like walking around at SEWE, you see a lot of different stuff. Like I
Yeah.
tell people there's something for everybody at SEWE. Like if my work isn't your thing, that doesn't mean somebody else's isn't. So a place like that is cool to check out.
Okay. Next question is.
I like your shoes, by the way.
Oh, thanks. They're my Golden Goose dupes.
Your what?
My Golden Goose dupes. Side note, when we were at SEWE this year, I told Ryan that if we sold out, that I was walking down King Street in Charleston and going to the Golden Goose store and buying myself a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And we got so close. And so every time somebody was looking at a painting, I would walk over to them and start talking to them. And I'd just say, please buy this painting. Help me get my Golden Gooses.
That's why we did so
it was either
well.
that or Louis Vuitton. So, and we sold all but 5. So I didn't quite get my Golden Gooses. So I went home and bought some dupes. And here they are.
Well, I appreciate your help, and I'm sorry to disappoint.
It's all good. I like them. Okay. What kind of lighting do you use while painting? This person has a difficult time with the glare.
Yeah, it's tough when you're painting wet on wet, which I like to do. There's going to be glare. It's just it's wet paint. It's going to glare, and especially if you have texture and ridges, you're going to catch a glare somehow, some way. What I did here, and my go-to is Zach can overlay this with video. I just signed Zach up for all kinds of B-roll, but there's a 2x4 super flat panel like LED light that I got from Lowe's, and we suspend it down, and it has 3 different color temperatures and 2 or 3 different intensities. And I like using that because it's consistent. I did find one year, most people are going to display art in their home in warm, soft light. So it, like if you look in your home, like when you go to Lowe's and you buy like soft white kitchen bulbs, they have some yellow in them. They're warm. And that's kind of why you want like a soft, warm, cozy feel in your home. But you have to think about that when people buy art, because that art is going to be displayed in that same light. So one year for SEWE, I painted under really cool tungsten light, color accurate. I overcompensated with my colors. So I was painting under really cool light. I painted the colors warmer, and then when that got put under warm light, it went really hot. So I learned from that, and I put a little bit more warmth in my light here. So this is not a cool daylight color, and it's not the warmth either. It's an in-between. So I recommend that. I've tried the ballast, like different colored ballasts. I've put like a cool tube, like a fluorescent tube in, and a warm tube to even those out. But the two together, it got kind of funky. So I found that this flat panel from Lowe's works really well.
Sweet.
Yep.
This is my next question. And it's my favorite question. It says, do you have any of your artwork in your house?
Yes. We have one painting of Georgia,
Yeah.
our black lab, who passed.
Yeah.
I did her a long time ago. She was on the cover of a magazine. When I was working from home in a spare bedroom, we did.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have a few downstairs, and then we'd kind of rotate some originals
Mm-hmm.
throughout the house. But
Yeah.
now that we have this space, we kind of have an informal gallery.
Yeah.
It's like not open to the public, but we keep all the originals out here now.
And just a backstory on Georgia. She was Ryan's dog first. I met her when she was 4, and she kind of slowly turned to my dog.
She definitely became your dog.
And me and her were best buds, but she lived to be 15, which, I mean, we have pictures with both our kids with her. And
With Brooklyn?
uh-huh.
I didn't
Yeah.
think she was alive when Brooklyn was born.
She was, yeah. And that painting, I remember I think it was a Valentine's Day gift that you got for me, and of Georgia, and you framed it up, and remember, and you brought it home. I guess you took it to the frame shop when we were living at Lake Norman, brought it home, and it was framed in that black frame, and then we hung it, but it was awesome.
I don't remember that being a Valentine's Day
Mm-hmm.
gift. I was so romantic.
Uh-huh.
So sweet.
Oh,
Now we're in the days where, like, if we forget a gift or a birthday, it's like, hey, Brooklyn, draw a heart on this for mommy and give it to her. And it's like, yes, I'm golden.
oh. Well, that was a good one. And Georgia was a good pup.
Yeah, she was a really good dog. She definitely got all the love and care and affection from you that she missed for the first few years of her life.
Well, and now we have it hanging in the kids' playroom. So we say that Georgia's watching over our kids.
Yeah. She was a great dog. She was like that cool, totally chill lab that your kids could roll over and climb on, and she'd be totally fine with it.
Yeah. But now I've told Ryan with our house, now that we have this separate building for his business, that we keep all of his originals and prints and whatnot hanging in the gallery here. And then our house is mostly covered in family pictures, but we don't have a ton of wall space. It's a lot of windows. So our wall space is limited. So I've got a lot of pictures of the kids around now.
That's how life has changed.
Yep.
What's next?
Okay. Let's see. Okay. The next question. Now that you've been a featured artist at SEWE, what's the next goal? That's a good one.
Well, we talked about this a little bit before in a previous podcast. We've got a lot going on here, and the business has changed a lot and evolved. I mean, we're doing a podcast, we're doing video, we're doing a lot of stuff. So my short-term goal is to get things streamlined here. Like, we have a lot of stuff going on. We've started a lot of new projects. We've changed a lot. We're reworking the warehouse space. So the short term is just to get all that streamlined so it can kind of run efficiently without me being involved as much. And then I'm going to paint a lot more from here on out. So I previously had done a lot of design work, and I've walked away from almost all of that. So it's all art from here on out. And as far as goals, it's to get all that streamlined up and going to where it doesn't slow me down in the studio. And then I'm just going to produce a lot more work. We want to work with a lot more licensees. I don't have any like specific shows in mind, or
that was my next question. You have any other shows you've been considering?
We'll see how it goes. The nature of it is we've got young kids, we've got a lot going on here, and shows are a grind. Like it's more travel, it's more everything.
Oh yeah.
So if we get our stuff ironed out here, I will have the margin to do more shows, and we probably will.
There's a couple that people would always talk to us about at SEWE that they say, "Oh, you should go to this one or that one." And
there's
they
one
sound
in
pretty
Thomasville.
good.
There's the Dallas Safari Clubs and all the safari clubs. There's like
Vegas.
A bunch of them now. There's a bunch of shows out west. I don't really have a lot of Western art.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I really haven't thought that far out. We're literally just kind of in the get back home from SEWE and grind mode, and we're kind of in a building phase. So, our print sales do really well. We have a lot going on here, and getting that set as like the foundation of the business is priority number one, and then we'll build on that with more new art.
So what's one thing you learned outside of school that has been most useful?
There's a lot. I mean, we talked about this in a previous episode as well, but I went to art school. I got a degree in graphic design and a minor in multimedia. So I learned some technical skills like design, some artistic principles, grew a little bit in my drawing technique and stuff, but everything else I've had to learn outside of school. And I think everybody's like that to a certain extent. You can get a business degree, but you don't really know anything until after your first year. You'll learn more in your first year of working somewhere else than you will in 8 years of school. So if I had to narrow it down to, I've had to learn a lot on the fly too, just by experience, by hard knocks, by reading. I don't really know if I had to narrow it down to one thing. There's a million things. But really, project management, how to manage myself, how to hit deadlines, how to stay on track, how to be efficient. That's one thing that I learned outside of school.
The business aspect too. I mean, running the business, and you didn't take a ton of business classes at school.
Didn't do any.
Right. That's what
I got a C in Econ 101.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
I'd never known that you've gotten a C. I thought you were like straight A's through and through.
Not in college. I was in high school. That was the only C I ever got in college. But for those of you that don't know,
for the rest of us,
Kim has an MBA, and all the time I have had to learn like practical business, like not corporate accounting or fancy terms. I've had to learn like how stuff works on a blue collar actual level. So, I mean, I don't even know where we would get into that. I've had to learn copyright law. I've had to learn corporate law, setting up an LLC. I've had to learn accounting. I've had to learn how to do the books. I've had to learn stuff about printers and computers,
payroll
and IT department, payroll. I've had to learn about retail versus wholesale. I'd have to learn how to I'll do cost breakdowns in an Excel spreadsheet of how much is the paper going to be, the box, the tape, all that kind of stuff. And that's all stuff that I don't want to have to learn. I've had to be successful and get things going. So
on the other side of this is another question that we got. But what is one thing you learned in school that has been the most useful in your career thus far?
A lot of the technical stuff. When I first went to college, so like my high school was real small. We had 49 kids in my graduating class. Sorry. We did not have, like, the computer lab was like 8 PCs, so I didn't know, like, they have graphic design classes and web design in high school these days. I didn't have that. I didn't turn on a Mac computer till I was a sophomore in college. And now my entire life is on a Mac computer. So getting up to speed there, getting involved in the programs, growing as a individual, like developing social skills. I was in a fraternity. I had to get along with guys and, come out of my shell a little bit. That was all things that I learned in college.
Were you in any clubs or anything that you felt like were really beneficial besides your fraternity?
No, it was pretty much just all our fraternity. So Bradley didn't have a lot of we didn't have a football team. We didn't have a lot of athletics, not a ton of extracurricular stuff. So a lot of people were involved in the Greek system there. And that's why I did it. But I don't know. I mean, I really, most of what I know and learn has been like School of Hard Knocks. And I remember most of my best college professors were people that had full-time jobs. Mm-hmm. And they would go work and then they'd go teach at night. And so like a lot of my art professors were all kind of like, very tapping into your subconscious and pushing your creativity and trying this and trying that. But a lot of the people that worked are like, look, here's how this is going to go. So you have a skill, you have technical abilities, you have creativity, but that has to fit in a job environment if you're going to be successful. And I remember, I'll never forget, we had one teacher that came in, and typically in a design project in your graphic design class, they would give you the copy, they'd give you some images, they'd give you things, and you would have to put it all together. And she handed us a black and white piece of paper with the copy on it. She's like, you guys got to type that. You're going to type that to work that into your design. And like the class like collectively groaned. And she's like, look, if you think that you're going to go into design world and every single time you have to do a project, you're going to have the copy and the images and the specs and everything figured out for you, and you just have to make it look pretty, you got another thing coming.
Yeah.
And so we had to type. We're literally taking the 6 paragraphs of copy for our project and having to type it out. And now that's all I do. I have to write the copy for about everything we do. I've written copy for clients. I've done all that kind of stuff. And like that kind of hard lessons where this is not going to be handed to you. You have to take your abilities and your talent and your brain and deliver something. That fundamentally changed my career.
So along those lines, as long as I've known you, you are a huge proponent of listening to audiobooks and podcasts and reading and all kinds of stuff. So is there, I don't know, a couple books or audiobooks or podcasts that stick out in your mind that you feel like have been really helpful in the development of your career that you would recommend to your listeners?
Yeah. I think it's Stephen Pressfield's the War of Art, I think is what it's called. That is like my core philosophy, and he like put words to how I just operated naturally, where you as a creative, you have to show up and grind every day. Like you show up and you do your work and the creativity will flow. A lot of artists think like, oh, I've got to be inspired before I paint, or I've got to be motivated to start my business. Well, that's not how life works. Like it's kind of like working out. If you wait till you're motivated and energized to go to the gym, like you're never going to go. You have to show up and do it. And that has been a great one for me, about how you show up and grind and you let the creativity come to you in your schedule. I listen to a ton of habitat podcasts. I'm a big habitat dork. We talked about
this, I know.
You buying a farm.
Yes.
I guess I'm your property manager, aren't I?
Apparently, we got a lot of farms.
Not a lot of farms. We have a couple small ones.
More farms than I ever envisioned owning.
Well, that's true. The fun, I have to give you a hard time about this. When we bought, we were living in our house. We had an acre and a quarter or something in our old house, and we were talking about buying land
in Boone.
In Boone,
okay,
behind SP, and you were like, how did you say this? It was hilarious. I was like, yeah, I'd love to have more land. You're like, what do you mean? We have over an acre. That's a big tract of land. And I was like, well, I'm not sure anyone has said tract of land since like the Oklahoma Sooners back in the day, and people were homesteading. But B, I grew up on 150 acres in Illinois, which is not a big farm, but so like a little over an acre is like a food plot to me.
Hey, compared to my little small condo I had
exactly
prior to that was a lot. It's the most I'd ever owned.
Kim, technically speaking of like things I've had to learn is like corporate law, like setting up LLCs and all that kind of stuff. So Kim owns the LLC that has our farm in it. So you have 75 acres now total. And Kim owns it. So I am technically Kim's property manager.
Yep. Super.
I don't even know where we were at with that.
Well, that was a goal for you. You've always wanted to own land as long as I've known you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yep. It's in my blood.
Yeah. We've got it now, at least here at home, and you got some in Illinois. So
what were we even talking about?
We were talking about books. You were land management.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I'm a big biology and habitat management dork. I listen to Jake Hofer, the Land podcast, all the time. I listen to Land and Legacy all the time. Zach has turned me on to Theo Vaughn. So when I need a good laugh or I've had a hard day, I listen to Theo Vaughn talk about God knows what. He's hilarious.
You listen to Gary Vee quite a bit. I know that's not land management.
That was years ago.
But you used to listen to him.
Yeah, he had a lot of hardcore business advice that I liked.
Yeah.
He just talks about kindness all the time now. So I listen to him as much.
Right?
It's like he's made his fortune and now he just doesn't care about, making money and grinding. He wants to talk about everybody being kind to each other. And it's like, that's awesome. That's great. I'm a proponent, but like, hey dude, I'm still trying to fly this plane in the air. I need some, aviation advice. I can't be kind to my co-pilot when this plane's going down. I gotta hustle, bro.
Oh my goodness.
But actually, one of my favorite audiobooks to listen to is Phil Jackson's 11 Rings, because I grew up in the Midwest. I was a Bulls fan, back in the 90s, like a lot of people were. But MJ's my favorite basketball player. I started listening to Phil's book, and it's cool talking about how he wrangled all those personalities. Like, I mean, you're talking about like Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Horace Grant, that's a cast of characters that you have to like manage. And then he goes to the Lakers and he's talking about Kobe and Shaq. Those are two huge personalities you got to manage. And his like strategy of putting people together and managing personalities and stuff, and his kind of hands-off approach, like his leadership style, I like that. I thought it was cool. And it's a fun book. I've listened to that 3 times.
That sounds like it would be
So-
good for anybody who is in a position of managing a team.
Managing a team, but also you're sports fans. I
Yeah.
mean, he talks about, Rodman going on a bender in Vegas and Michael playing 36 holes of golf before a playoff game. Like, there's a lot of cool behind the scenes that if you were a big 90s sports fan and early 2000s, you'd get a lot out of it.
So those are some recommendations of what you've listened to that's helped you in your career. One of the questions you had was, what do you listen to in your ear pods when you're painting? And that you get that question a lot. So I think that's a good one to address.
That stuff, what I just said.
Oh, same stuff? Okay.
I mean, yeah.
You ever listen to music or no?
No.
Sometimes.
It is weird. So, I started reading a book. It was on right brain, left brain stuff, and it might be called like Drawn with the left side of your brain. I can't remember what it was, but they talk about how, and I get these confused all the time. Where I think the left side of your brain is the creative, the right side is the analytical side. And literally they tell you one side is used for like reading, cognitive thinking, speaking to people. The other side is completely creative, dreaming, all that kind of stuff. And I tell everybody that works here, if you come and ask me a question in the middle of a painting, I cannot form an answer. It'll take me 5 minutes to like stop staring at you blankly, because my head is in that space and
Very
I
true.
cannot, and it's one thing like I can't stand to be interrupted because Kim is a multitasker, massively detailed. And when I get in creative mode, if you ask me a question, it takes me 20 minutes to come out of creative mode and another 20 to get back in. So just stopping me to answer a simple question is like 45 minutes of me losing everything, losing my train of thought. So, but I have found that in the mornings, and it's why a lot of creative people listen to music, is that helps you get into the left side of your brain. The right side of your brain, though, being able to comprehend, and you can't, I guess what I'm getting at is if I'm in creative mode, I can't process information as well. It kind of has to be like background noise. But I have found that in the mornings I do better listening to music, and then I get a thirst or taste for an audiobook about 2 or 3 in the afternoon or a podcast. So it's like the music helps me get going creatively.
Right.
And then eventually it's like once my brain is warmed up, I can listen to a podcast. It's really weird.
Do you have any favorite artists that you like to listen to?
Artists?
Yeah, like
Oh,
when you're
musicians.
like in the
Yeah, I mean, I'm big like 90s country. I like some mainstream country, Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen, some of that. I don't like the pop country. Some Pearl Jam. I like to listen to Pearl Jam. But I have found though that
sometimes I come in and you are bumping into some hip hop.
I haven't done that in a
Yes,
while.
Zach shaking his head.
No, I work out to 50 Cent every morning. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I rarely do that with the ear pods. But one thing that I know for a fact and is that your mindset shows up in your work. So so I have to be careful about some of the things I listen to and let influence me, because that'll show up in my work. So if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's also one of the reasons too, where like I've told Kim this. Kim, by the way, gets all of my like brain dumps at the end of the day. Like all that is directed towards her.
Very true.
But this day, like where we're at in business, I have to work very hard to protect my mindset, because that will show up in my work. And if I get spread too thin or I'm like distracted, that will show up in my work. 100%. I've seen it. I can look at signatures on our prints and tell what mindset I was by how the signature goes.
That's interesting. I would have never thought that.
Yep. Because if I'm signing my name and it's kind of clean and like the R is rounded, and it's kind of open and loose, I was in a good place. If it's very angled or scribbly, like that, like the difference in that, that bottom side, I was in a bad place and I was hustling, I was distracted, and I was spread thin. And I can look at my signature and tell where I was at mentally during that piece. Same with art. I can look and say, I was distracted there. I did not know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I can also look at a piece and like, man, that piece flowed from the first brush stroke to the last because I knew what I wanted. I knew where I was going, and I had the mental and physical capacity to do it.
That makes sense.
I'm a head case. I'm sorry.
Oh, my dear. My love.
When Kim was pregnant, she had what the ladies call pregnant brain, where like couldn't focus, misplaced stuff, we're all over the map, and that is not Kim. Kim is on it. She's detailed. And she's like, this pregnant brain, it's killing me. I was like, well, welcome to my world. This is what my head is every single day of my life. She's like, I hate it. I don't know how you live like this.
No. Yep. Won't have to do that again. Okay. Thanks. That was good. So here's another good one. So when it comes to painting wildlife, is it more important to get the anatomy correct or the color?
Anatomy. For sure.
Why?
It depends on what you're going for. Like, if your style is abstract, like a Picasso, and you want to do it that way, do whatever you want. I mean, you can do if you're doing more abstract decorative pieces, I'd say the color, because that's kind of the stuff that like interior designers would pick for hotel lobbies. You know, it has to match the color scheme of the carpet. That's all they really care about. If you want to do representational work like I try to do, you have to get the anatomy right. I just heard the camera ding.
That was my watch. Sorry.
Oh. Okay. If you want to do representational work like I do, you have to get the anatomy right. And it's kind of like you can get, trying to think how to approach this, but you can have very, very loose sketch that the anatomy is right and it's very like gestural, suggestive, kind of free flowing. And if you nail the anatomy, you'll nail the sketch. People can fill in the details mentally, but if you have the most flawless color and perfectly detailed and you've outlined every hair, but like the deer's head is lopsided, it's going to look like crap. Like it's not going to work. That's why I focus so much more, and that's why my sketching helps me. I focus way more on the anatomy, on shapes, on forms, and everything else, and let people fill in the details on their own. The other thing is, I can take an accurate color deer, and then I can take an accurate black and white deer, and you'll be able to tell both are great pieces of art. They're deer. So what that tells me is the color doesn't really matter. Okay. So if you get the form, the function, the shape, the edges, the anatomy correct, you can have a great piece in color or black and white. So
yeah,
but
sense.
You can't, if you screw up the anatomy, you can't have a great piece in color in black and white. Like if you screw up the anatomy and have great color, it's still going to be a turd. If you screw up the anatomy and it's black and white, it's going to be a turd. But if you get the anatomy right, color doesn't really matter as much.
Makes sense.
And it's way easier. But one of the things that's been tremendously hard for me, because I didn't have any training really, or I didn't really have anybody show me this, is how to mix color. I had to learn a lot of that by trial and error.
Yeah.
And that is a hard one. But temperature, your color temperature also matters too. So warmth, like brights, oranges, yellows, and stuff, and then your cools, your blues, and your some of your neutrals, that matters too. So I would say your anatomy, your form comes first, your color temperature second, and then the actual color third.
So this brings me to another question. So when you're doing when you're doing a painting and you're doing the underpainting,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it's called,
Mm-hmm.
right? You always use that burnt sienna color.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, I naturally am bent towards the warmer side of the spectrum. Like that's just kind of how I go. Like a lot of my paintings are warmer. They're not really as cool. That's a good earth tone. It's a tone that a lot of animals have in them. Like turkeys have a lot of warmth in them, really. Deer do. A lot. Any of your like brown furry animals, they're gonna have more of a warm brown undertone to them. So that's why I start there a lot. It's just an easy color for me to
blend, maybe
not blend, but so well. Another thing is that everything is relative in art. Okay, so and this is like a good metaphor for life. So you can say something is dark. Well, dark compared to what? Okay, like dark. It might be dark compared to white, but if you put it next to black, it might not be that dark. And that's kind of what, like, you see those seeing eye tricks all the time. Like, you know what I'm talking about, those eye tricks. Well, bright red compared to yellow might look different than bright red compared to blue. So you have to put things side by side and compare them. Like, what's good? Well, good compared to what? Good compared to great is not good. Good compared to bad is good. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So as you put down colors, you have to evaluate them next to the color that they're in. Yeah. And it's all relative. So you have to, and that's one thing that I feel like I've improved at, but can still have a long ways to go, is evaluating the image as a whole as you go, because you have to evaluate your brushstroke compared to the one next to it.
Right.
So that burnt sienna is a good color for me to, with my style, to evaluate next to another color I'm laying on top of it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You know me, I always tell you I like your blues. That's my favorite.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to paint more of those. But like if I put yellow down, I don't know how to, that confuses me, because I put blue down next to yellow. Well, I don't know how to evaluate that. But if I put blue down next to a burnt sienna, I can tell if I'm on track. Yeah. Cool. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I hope so.
That was an off-the-cuff question, but I think that's something I've always been curious about too. Is why you always start with, and I'm assuming, forgive me if this is a silly question, burnt sienna, is that the color? That's the name of the color?
That's the name of the color, yeah. Yeah. And what I also do is I've started knocking some of the warmth off by mixing it with Terra Verde, which is a green. Oh, and so red and green are complementary colors. And when you mix them together, they balance each other out. They go neutral. So I neutralize some of the warmth of that burnt sienna with a little bit of Terra Verde to give it more of a neutral brown than anything else. I know
that was probably a technical question, but I feel like that would be really helpful for your listeners for sure to understand.
No, it's a good one. And it's a good, you have to consider that for two reasons. Is that one, the way I paint anyway, you are never going to cover all of that. So it's going to show through. Okay. And part of that is on purpose, because little specks of that all over the canvas unify the colors. Okay. Because you'll see a little bit of that through everywhere. It will also set the tone for your painting. So I'm looking at that Outdoor Life cover right there with, I can't remember what that was called. But
Mountain Mystic or
something. Blowing Smoke.
Oh yeah.
With the elk on, and it's a very cool color. And we knew we wanted that color scheme with Outdoor Life before we started. So I used some ultramarine. I used a bluer undertone in that painting. These two up here, I would have, especially Turn and Burn, I would have used a burnt sienna. So again, you're evaluating every brush stroke next to the color that's already on canvas. So if you choose a warm color, you're probably going to go warm that whole painting. If you choose a cool color, you're probably going to go cool that whole painting. And that's something I want to experiment more with as an artist.
I mean, I love all of your work, but I think that when you go cool colors like Defender and the most recent elk painting you did, and what was it, Crossing Guards, another one of my favorites. Yep. Oh, they're awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Crossing Guard, I think, is underrated. I think that's an underrated painting. I think that's one of my best ones.
It truly is. Yeah. Just just a little side note. Go check out Crossing Guard.
But, commercially, like, it hasn't been as successful.
Yeah.
But it literally is probably the best piece I've ever painted.
Yeah.
No joke.
Yep. Yep. That
Like,
and Harvest Moon, right? Isn't that another one that technically you've been really pleased with?
yeah, Harvest Time.
Harvest,
That was a
yeah.
good one. And this is like something. It's like the eighth wonder of the world or whatever. Like, it's a mystery to me. I can do something, and we talked about this like in a previous podcast of like why artists aren't successful. And there are times I fall into this where I can do something that I think is flawless. Like I push myself. I did what I wanted to. I'm happy with the piece, and then it is just mediocre when it comes to the general public.
Yeah.
And then you do a piece, and Kim's good at pushing me on this, but like I'll do a piece that I think is a freaking turd, and I want to set it in the corner of my studio, and it's popular.
Yeah.
You know, I have that all the time. Like I'll sketch. One of my favorite sketches I've ever done is of a walking cow elk, and I feel like I freaking nailed it. And it's just like, man, I did it. You know. But it's a cow elk, so nobody cares. You know? But you put, a 380 set of antlers on that thing and do a bugling bull that's just average technically and as an artist, and everybody loves it and shares it. And there are things that I've done like that are like, yes, artistically, that's exactly what I was going for, and I'm so proud of myself. But if the public doesn't like it, they don't like it.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So well, it's like we talked in that podcast. You have to consider the market. You have to consider what you're doing. And, and I really don't know why Crossing Guard isn't that successful. Maybe
I don't,
it's the
honestly,
background.
I don't think that you haven't really showcased it as much.
Yeah, maybe not.
And I think if you were to showcase,
we will on this YouTube video, though.
Side note,
But,
Zach.
I think the subject matter makes a difference. I think that the background makes a difference. The size of the market makes a difference. So for Harvest Time, John bought that. He's kind of a buddy of mine from back home in Hancock County, and that is a great piece. If you've ever sat in a Midwest right after the corn comes out, everything's fresh. You can smell the dirt. You can hear the geese honking over as they go to roost. Sunset, it's cold, it's clear, and you've got that deer. And I feel like I nailed the kind of emotion,
right, color
vibe of that. But if you've never hunted in the Midwest, you literally don't even know what that piece is about.
Right.
Like if all you've done is hunt with your thermocell, getting bit by mosquitoes in a longleaf pine tree in Alabama, you don't know what that is. And so that might be one. There's no scenery in Crossing Guard. It's kind of a cool, you never know, if I paint a mountain range in the back, it might be really popular. It was a finalist in Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation Core Pack. So it's not like it wasn't popular on some level. The other thing is you've got to get it in front of a certain amount of people. You never know. To your point, maybe not enough people have seen it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of variables to it, but most of it comes down to subject matter and marketing, I feel like, if you're going to be successful. And probably more subject matter than anything.
Well, and also, I mean, we talked about this when you were working on your lineup for SEWE, but like you just said, looking at your market. So we knew going into SEWE with our experience and going there, what that general public and that market is like.
Yeah.
And the market there, they love quail, they love upland game, pheasant. And so I really tried to encourage you to, obviously paint what you are passionate about, but also paint for the market too, because that's what people want to see that are there. And I think that was a huge contributing factor to the success of your show, was because you painted what people came to see.
Yep.
So let's talk about your logo. So I remember when we'd first moved to Boone and you were sort of rebranding, going from Ryan Kirby Art and Illustration to just Ryan Kirby Art, Ryan Kirby.
Mm-hmm.
And you put a lot of thought into that rebrand. Mm-hmm. And I knew that you were using that creative side of your brain quite a bit during that time. what made you choose like the buffalo, bison? Why not turkey or deer or something else that you typically, always talk about how you love and are passionate about?
Yeah. Well, I think it was episode 1. No, episode 2. We talked about that a little bit. So go get our watch hours up on YouTube and watch episode 2. So what I did is I went to the library at App State. And my buddy Michael, we were kind of talking about it. The idea is that artists have been telling the story of the hunt for generations. And through literally cave art. Like artists have literally helped to tell the story of hunting, of game, of wild things and wild places, and pass those stories on to future generations through art. So that's the whole concept of the brand and the imagery that we chose. When I went to research a lot of like Native American Paleolithic art, a lot of times it's just like a beastly image, right? It's not, oh, that's a bull elk and that's a Cape buffalo and that's a mule deer. It was like, I don't know if they just weren't that good at art or they didn't have great tools or what, but it's like a cow with stag antlers or looks like a bear with horns. They're just kind of like abstract sort of beastly characters. So it's really not necessarily a buffalo. It does resemble a buffalo, but it's more of an abstract just beast sort of from back in the day. I didn't try to do it representational of any one specific animal. And that's the story of everything. So what I did is I ended up painted a ton. Well, I actually painted the logos. So I set up like a big 36 by 48 piece of gator board, and I just took some color. I was going to do it black and white, and I just painted a bunch of forms based on what I had seen of actual cave art over time. And I settled on that one. I just like the form. I like the balance. It does resemble a bison more than anything, but it wasn't like I'm going to have a buffalo logo. And the reality is too, like, there's no way I could incorporate every animal that I paint in my logo. It would look like the logos that people try to get me to do. Can you put a duck and a dove and a turkey and a deer and a cottonmouth and everything in that logo? And it's like, no, you cannot put all that in that logo because that's not a logo. Yep. But I wanted a mark that could just be kind of cool. Could work on apparel, could work as an icon itself, could work with the word mark below. But all that to say, I do need to paint more buffalo. I think they're cool. Yeah. And I do need to paint more.
I think you've only painted one.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
We took that to SEWE a couple years ago.
Yep.
All right. So this is a question that I see a lot in comments on your social media, but you have a lot of followers who have certain requests of, what's going to be the next print? What is, are you going to do, mule deer or elk or, is there, obviously you have your deer, you have, the turkey, you have the waterfowl and so forth. Do you have any plans in the future, you think, of doing any other prints similar to that with...
You talking about paper prints?
Yep.
We've talked about that and we've talked about that in previous episodes. It is a ton of work to produce a print like that. People don't realize how much time and effort and research. The art is almost the easiest part of that for me. Right. Like actually drawing and sketching the animals. You've got the layout, you've got to do all the research. I work with like the top biologists in the field on facts and figures and stuff like that. So it's months of time and research. And it takes a long time to develop that. And it's also it's pretty expensive. It's the whole printing process. We've got YouTube videos on that, so check those out. But like the whole printing process, the proofing process, it's not like I just sit down in a day and create something and then hit print on our printer and we just have it. There's a lot involved in it. And if you're going to devote that many resources to it, it's got to be successful.
Yeah.
Like I want a good chance of success on it. And going back to the size of the market, like there's just not as many mule deer hunters as there are whitetails. Okay. So I'd have to look more into it. We'd have to do a little bit more research on it, but you know, we've got to sell probably at least 1,000 to make it worthwhile. Right. And you got to figure out, are there enough mule deer hunters that are passionate enough to buy my art, put it on their wall to make that worth the time?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's easier for me to do an oil painting of a mule deer than it is to do all the time and research and press checks and all that kind of stuff than do a print like that. So the other thing is, one of the reasons I feel like our prints have been successful is there's like a hook in them. Like there's killing a grand slam is a big deal. There's the grand slam of the wild turkey. Shot placement on whitetails is a big deal. We have the anatomy and physiology of a whitetail for bow hunters primarily. Aging whitetail deer is a thing. Hunting specific flyways and checking off how many species you've shot in those flyways, that's a thing. So there has to be a thing that goes with it. Like, so I'd have to know what that is for that particular species and that particular style of hunting in order to make it successful.
Yeah.
And some of those, I'm not really convinced there is.
Yeah.
You know, maybe there is, but I don't know anybody that
Upland game birds. I don't know.
Well, maybe, but like, I don't know anybody that ages elk.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, he's a 340. I'm looking for 350 and above. So we're going to pass. Like they're not looking at him thinking, oh, he's a 3-year-old. We probably need to let him get to 4, because chances are, the way those guys hunt, they're public land. Those elk move a lot. Like you may never see that bull again in your life. You might, but it's so like people have asked, would we do a growth and maturity of elk? Well, that's not really a thing as far as I know. It's not a mainstream thing. Some guys might do it, but so the answer is no, we're not going to do that because I don't think we would sell enough to justify it.
Yeah. You know, one of the questions that I know you get from your followers and comments and messages and so forth is, what advice would you have for an emerging artist who wants to go all in art? And I remember when we were at SEWE, I had a mom and a daughter come up and ask me that too. And one thing I told her is, you know, don't quit your day job, because I remember you were doing, you know, you were working days and then painting at night, and I just wondered if you could speak more to that. Yeah.
Well, what I did, so Kim and I were dating and we were doing long distance. She was in Charlotte and I was still working full time for the Turkey Federation and literally painting like nights and weekends. And I was just trying to get better. I was trying to produce some more work. When I started doing it, I had no intentions of going out on my own. I was just doing it because I hadn't done it in a while and I wanted to pick it up. And there are a lot of artists that do it just part-time and kind of tinker with it. The odds, everybody, you know, a lot of people, especially younger artists, think I'm just going to leave high school and I'm going to be a wildlife artist. But the odds of doing that are like getting drafted out of high school in the NBA. Like, yes, we do have like the Kobe's and LeBrons and a few of them. It's very, very, very rare. It's very hard for someone just to start and do art unless they're going to live in their parents' basement and have no bills, because you don't have a name for yourself. You don't have a body of work you can present. You don't have a consistent way of doing new work. So I would tell people I learned a lot by graduating college and getting a real job and learning production, learning deadlines, learning product, making connections in the industry. And then eventually I started getting enough freelance work kicked back to me, I could go out on my own. And that's how I did it. So I even used freelance design work to bridge the gap between me leaving a full-time job and doing full-time wildlife art. And I'm 40 and I'm really just now this year is probably the first time I'll do full-time art.
Yeah.
Ever. Is. You know, I've always done client work. I've always done things like that. And even the professional wildlife artists that you see are doing other stuff to round out their income. Like a lot of them are teaching classes, weekend courses. some of them teach college classes on the side. It's very, very rare for someone to say, I'm going to paint wildlife for a living and I'm not going to do anything but paint originals. A lot of times they have a licensing agent or somebody that's kicking some revenue into them. I honestly don't know anybody that's just gone straight from high school and said, I'm going to paint wildlife art originals and that's all I'm going to do forever, and they make it. So you just got to be open to that, and you've got to realize that like you're going to have other skill sets than painting. And it's one of the things younger artists ask that question all the time, and I get it because that's where they're at, and that's where I was at too. But you have to ask bigger questions than just, how do I paint the deer's antlers better? Because painting deer's antlers great doesn't equate with success. Unless the only thing you want to do is do a good painting. If you want to run a business, if you want to support a family, if you want to do all that kind of stuff, that's one piece of the equation, but it's part of a much larger equation.
Yeah, that's a good one. So another question that you had was, you're pretty open about your faith and your religion and how we operate our family and so forth. And one question was, do you have a favorite Bible verse that you like to
Well, there's two. I don't know. I like Proverbs a lot. And I wrote a couple of these down, but Proverbs 22:29 says, a man who excels in his work will stand before kings. He will not stand before unknown men. And I think that I'm a farm kid and I'm project task oriented. So this is easy for me to go there because I'm wired that way. But you have to be good at your job. You have to be good at your work. And if you are good at your work, you will be successful on some level. Okay. We talk a lot about that, about marketing and all that kind of stuff, but you have to be good at what you do first. You have to be good at your craft, and that can be open to anybody. That can be, you can be an electrician. You can, be a grader. You can do anything you want, but if you're good at it, you will excel to some level. The other thing is Proverbs 17:24, and I'm paraphrasing this, but wisdom is wisdom is right in front of you, but the fool's eyes are on the ends of the earth. And you remember when I would go speak at ASU entrepreneur summits and all that kind of stuff, and you have all these young kids that have an entrepreneurial spirit, and that's great, and that's awesome that they have that and they're ambitious. But a lot of the questions that they had would be like, well, how do I get funding to start my business? Like, how do I go raise venture capital? Okay. And you kind of have your Shark Tank moments. It's like, you don't have a business yet. Like, you haven't figured out how to take the initial steps to develop a product. The worst thing that could happen to you is for you to have $100,000 in venture capital money, because you don't know how to spend that. And it's going to make you lazy. Because if you have a problem, you're just going to throw money at it and buy your way out of it. I think it's massively important for people starting a business, for artists, for our kids, to learn how to solve problems, to learn how to get themselves out of a bad situation. Like, you got to bootstrap stuff first and figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work. You got to take a few lumps, and then you can start looking to some of these outside sources to help you out. But it's just like having Zach here with video. It doesn't work if we don't have a business that's functioning before he gets here and starts doing video and all that kind of stuff, And I think a lot of people think that if who's an influencer that you follow on social media? A woman influencer.
I mean, it depends on the topic.
Give me one.
Lauren Palmer.
Okay, who's that? I don't know who that is.
She does a lot of clothes and.
Okay. Well, say you have a fashion brand, right? And you bought your first sewing machine yesterday, and then you made your first dress. And you sit here and think, oh, if only, is it Lauren? Mm-hmm. If only Lauren Palmer would give me a shout out on Instagram. Yeah. If only this would happen. That's the worst thing that could happen to you is Lauren Palmer gives you a shout out on Instagram, because then you have 75 people want to buy your dresses. You're pulling all-nighters to get your stuff done, and your dresses are falling apart. Like, that's the worst thing that could happen to you. You've got to take the little steps that are right in front of you, and it's like a breadcrumb, like one step right in front, one step right in front, one step right in front. Typically what you need is within arm's reach of you at the time. And you need to figure out how to make your dresses. You need to figure out how to scale your dresses. You need to figure out how to source your material. And then when you get to the point, then when Lauren Palmer gives you a shout out, you're ready for it. But a lot of these people think they have their eyes on the ends of the earth thinking, if only this would happen, if only that would happen. And it's like, take the step that's right in front of you. The worst thing that could happen is someone takes you to a place that you can't handle yet. You got to take the step that's right in front of you. And then when you're ready, the opportunity will present itself.
That's good.
And I get that a lot from people. They think that there's some external factor that's going to help contribute to their success, and it ain't there. You got to take one step right in front of you.
That's good. Okay, let's see what other questions that we have. Do you have a dream vacation or a dream hunt?
I would love to take my wife to the Canadian Rockies for our 10-year anniversary. End of story.
Shameless plug.
No, we probably are going to do that. Not really. I mean,
you've done a lot of cool hunts.
No, I've not. I've not done a lot.
I think you have.
I've done like 4, and we didn't really get on anything. We were trying to DIY it our whole time, me and Ed.
Well, you went to some cool places.
We went to cool places, yeah, that's for sure. We've done caribou, moose, and elk are the 3 big ones that I've done. So those were awesome places. They were great experiences. Everybody talks about like traveling overseas and traveling the world. There's so many cool places in North America that I've never seen that I want to see those first. That's a hard question because my answer 2 years ago would be very different than it is now. I would much rather take Rhett and Brooklyn turkey hunting around here than I would, go to New Zealand to hunt stag or something like that. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't have a great answer for that because we're just not in that phase of life where I'm like dreaming about dream hunts. I'd like to get our kids their first turkey.
Yeah. Getting
Retta's first turkey is my dream hunt, I guess.
That's a good answer.
Yep.
That's a really good answer. I think, do you have any hobbies other than the work and hunting? Is there anything else you like to do outside of that?
Oh, I mean, there's a ton of stuff, but I just cut that stuff off because we don't really have time. I mean, we're in that phase of life. We got little kids. We've got a growing business that it feels like it's requiring more from me all the time. And like, I love to golf, but I don't even have golf clubs. Like, when am I going to find time to golf? If I have a free afternoon, I'd rather be, hunting or going to take Rhett to shoot, or we've got baseball or something in the business, or we're at the lake or something like that. So, one thing that I really like and would like to do more of is like 3D archery with Rhett. I think he's getting into that, and I think it's cool. And I've shot a bunch of that when I was in high school. But yeah, I mean, I love sports. I love to, play sports, but we're just kind of in that phase. We got a lot going on. We got a 6 and a 3-year-old, and time is limited.
Sweet. Well, I think that kind of concludes the majority of the questions that your viewers and followers have submitted.
I've got a question for you.
Okay. Shoot.
And I ask Madison some questions every now and then, but like, what have you learned watching this whole thing go down? You
mean your like career and going out on your own?
Yeah, what have you seen? Because see, Kim, so a lot of people don't realize this, but Kim was with me when we first started like exhibiting at the Turkey Federation.
Yes.
And we've got some old school photos we can overlay here. But, Kim, I remember you were working at Wells Fargo.
Yep.
And you would plug your laptop in my truck and work the whole way up
Yep.
and the whole way back because you didn't have any PTO.
Right.
And I mean, we have some like humble beginning stories.
We do.
I mean,
well, we always joke about we've been together since you kind of started going out on your own.
yeah.
And we always joke about that. You remember when we went back to the bedded buck days? And it was that painting that you did that we weren't really crazy about. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't your best work by any means. And that was like 13 years ago, and to see how far you've come when we were first started, we brought all originals to the Turkey Fed show in, I guess, Nashville. Mm-hmm. And now looking back on that and, we probably would have been better off bringing prints, but we weren't big enough. We didn't have prints at that point. So we were really just there for exposure mainly.
Yeah.
And I was making hundreds of cookies with your mom trying to give out people to entice them to come into your booth.
I forgot about the cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they would get the cookie and then be like, oh, this is really nice artwork. And so we have literally started from the very bottom. And it's been very awesome to see you grow. I think that the progression of your career has been really inspiring. I've seen you grit it out during the hard times, during the unsure times, during, various challenges in our family. And I think that if anything, I think I told Zach this leading up to SEWE, but the thing that I always think about with you is the word that comes to mind is forward. And I go back to the speech that you gave at the Entrepreneur Summit in Boone a couple of years ago, where you were saying that you were like a shark and you don't really go to the left, you don't really go to the right, you just always keep moving forward, regardless of what comes to you. And that, I think, is probably the most humbling and inspiring thing that I've seen in your journey, or at least in our journey together.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been together since 2010.
Yeah.
So, I think from my perspective, I've kind of enjoyed having a front row seat, watching you grow and shine, and especially with you being named featured artist. We started working that together 10 years ago, and to see it kind of come on, all unfold 10 years later as you being named featured artist, and people are getting to know who you are, and we have regulars come back to the show, and we have their cell phone numbers, and we get up with them, and it's really cool to see. I would have never suspected, but I've told you from day one that you were going to be famous one day.
I didn't believe it. I don't even feel famous now.
Well, I know, but I've said that from the beginning. I knew you were going to be from the bedded buck days.
The bedded buck.
The bedded buck days to now. I knew that you would be a famous artist one day. And I think that, you're just moving forward, getting there.
Yeah.
And that's been cool to have a front row seat doing it. And I like to, I don't care to be in the limelight much. I do like being on sort of the background side of your business and helping wherever is needed. Obviously, my favorite part is going to the shows because I just enjoy, the black tie galas and the things that we don't get to do often. But it's been good having a front row seat in the background of watching you thrive.
The bedded buck, I painted a scene from LBL, from Land Between the Lakes, and I don't know. I mean, it was just one of my earlier pieces, but something about it, like Kim just did not like. And this was in the phase where we were dating, where you're trying to be nice to each other.
Yeah, I never said it.
She's like, "That's not very good." I was like, "Sorry, it's all I got right now." But you didn't quite get the shark analogy, but the shark. So a shark has to be moving forward to have oxygen over its gills. It can't just sit there like a bluegill at the Bass Pro tank. And so I've always operated that way. I will go to the left, I will go to the right, we'll pivot, but we'll always be moving forward in some direction.
Okay.
Like you have to be moving.
Got that wrong.
Yeah, I mean it's fine to go left, it's fine to go right, it's fine to it doesn't have to be a straight line, but it has to be moving forward. Like I cannot just sit in one spot and just wait on things to happen. But you got close.
I was close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, Kim. I don't have background in business, and Kim does, and so I end up bringing a lot of stuff home that she hears, and she's kind of like the steady, even keel one between the two of us, and I just am beating my head against the wall trying to figure stuff out all the time. So she's like a good sounding board, voice of reason on a lot of things.
I try to be.
Yep, you are.
I'm on your team.
Yep.
Always.
Like it or not.
Yeah. For better, for worse.
Yep. All right. Well, that has been episode 9. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for
taking
having
time
me.
out of your day.
I'm sure I'll be back.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you guys, and episode 10 coming next week.